In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I am so thankful to Allah for loving us and for having patience with us and for having plans for our happiness, for promising us money and luxury, good homes and friendship in all walks of life, and for demonstrating to us through one that He anointed, who came and brought Him in His person. And I'm speaking of Master Farad Muhammad, the great Mahdi, to whom all praise is forever due, who came here to America July 4th, 1930, and met with and raised up for us a divinely guided leader and teacher, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. I come before you as a student and representative of their anointed servant, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I greet my beloved brothers and sisters in the words of peace, in the original language of our fathers and mothers. Assalamu alaikum. How is everyone feeling? All praise is due to Allah. One of the primary purposes of this conference is to propagate the faith. When I was appointed as the Southern Regional Representative of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, I was quite taken when I read months later in an interview that he gave to Minister Jibril Muhammad that his appointment of me was not planned, but it was inspired. And he used two examples to show that he is a man who is moved not by intellect, even though he is brilliant, but who is moved by the inspiration of Allah. And he used two examples, my appointment and the Million Man March. He said neither one of those events was something that he thought of or that he calculated, but it came to him in a moment. And after listening to Minister William and what he had to say, I have to bear witness that being in the presence of Minister Farrakhan for many years and being in his presence in a context of taking down the Word of God as he receives it has affected me greatly. And it has given me faith to move on inspiration. One of the things that has happened to us in this society is we have lost faith with the power of God and the desire of God to inspire us.
That's right.
One of the workshops this morning was entitled Identifying the Spirit. It was conducted by Sister Ruth Muhammad and Brother Minister Eddie Muhammad. And in the few minutes I was there, I was overwhelmed by the testimony that I was hearing by people in this room who actually testified to events in their lives that our Christian brothers and sisters call miracles. And what we are beginning to see as Sister Ruth and Brother Eddie refuse to allow the people in the room to characterize these events as fantastic or extraordinary. They kept coming back with, no, this is very basic, this is very simple. As a human being, as a spiritually driven being, all of these things that you want to characterize as fantastic should be part of the ordinary course of your lives.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Well, one of the things that I saw, and I imagine that when Minister Farrakhan made the statement that in appointing me, he was bringing in a new way of rulership, the presence of the feminine component of Allah's attributes. When I came on my post, one of the things I observed was that when we come together, we tend to do it in a way that leaves us not satisfied.
That's right.
Because, you know, we sort of just call a meeting, we sit in a room, we talk, we rally, and then we go home. But Islam is a nurturing religion. The human being has a need for freedom of expression. And unless and until we begin to involve one another and rely on one another's gifts from God, we will not be successful. And what has made this conference successful is the involvement of all of these powerful minds that you see up here and that you see in the audience next to you. Last night, I was speechless. There was a talent show that was put together by the believers, and the youth were allowed to express the gifts that God has given them. It was not an amateur hour. What you heard and saw last night was highly developed talent. But not only were we entertained and the room was packed, but what gave me joy more than even the performance of the people was watching the joy, Sister Shelby, in the face of the parents as they watched their children. And watching the children and the youth, when they left the stage, they would run to their family. And I would see fathers and mothers hugging their children and children looking to their parents for approval, as if to say, see, I told you that I had a star quality. And now you see that it's true. And all praise is due to Allah. This event was a success because its purpose, again, was to propagate faith. The one thing that Minister Farrakhan drilled into me and continues to teach all of us is that this work is a mission of the resurrection of the spiritually and mentally dead. We were talking, some of the ministers and I yesterday, about the war between the spirit and the flesh. And as we go through this transitory period that Minister Farrakhan described in his interview in Closing the Gap, the pain and suffering that we may be experiencing first begins with us as individuals, because the flesh and the spirit are not any longer in a subtle state of hostility. The spirit and the flesh are in an open state of war. We can bear witness in the Nation of Islam when Minister Farrakhan introduced the study guide course, Self-Improvement, the basis for community development. At that time, we didn't really have any assets in the way of physical and tangible things. We were focused on studying the Word of God. Then out of our study of the Word of God, Allah, God, blessed us to regain physical property that belonged to the Nation of Islam. But what happened was we got so happy with our progress on the physical plane, and as the minister describes it, horizontal growth, that we stopped experiencing vertical growth. And so what happened as Minister Farrakhan continued, despite his material blessings, he continued to submit himself to the will of Allah, so he continued to evolve spiritually, but we hit a rut.
That's right.
We became stagnant, and we reached a point of zero growth. People stopped coming out to the meetings in our mosque and study groups because we became focused on acquiring buildings, acquiring clothes and cars, and trying to outdo one another in the acquisition of physical and personal possessions, and we stopped studying. We were trying to dress like the minister and look like the minister, but we weren't trying to be like Minister Farrakhan. And so a gap occurred. And he continued to evolve to the point where he developed such clarity of spirit that Allah, God, was not only able to give a message of redemption through him, but Allah began giving instructions to people to take action through him. See, it's one thing to receive the word of God and be able to carry a word of inspiration to someone. That is one level of spiritual development. But when you become so highly developed that Allah can actually use you to move humanity, then you have achieved a level where you are actually moving toward complete oneness with him. But we did not benefit in a tangible way from the Million Man March because we are still locked into the structure of the mosque of the Nation of Islam, and we don't know how to communicate with somebody without giving them an order. We are told in Scripture that we will know Allah in spirit and in truth. Well, our Christian brothers and sisters and us, because we're Christians too, we've known him in spirit. But until the coming of Master Farad Muhammad, we didn't know him in truth. But we have him in truth, but we have lost the spirit. And so when we interact with one another and with our brothers and sisters, we come in a way that is void of compassion, void of the love that is the fruit of the Spirit, where we judge somebody because of their dietary regimen. When all of us came up out of a pork-eating, collard green-eating background just a few years ago. And if you didn't eat pork, your parents did. And if they didn't, their parents did. But nobody in here is a long distance from death. And since Allah in His mercy raised us up, it is now incumbent upon us to come to our brothers and sisters not with a regiment, but with love. We are not in the Old Testament of the Bible anymore. We are in the New Testament. The law has a place. It is the ladder to love. And when love comes, you don't even need law. Minister Farrakhan said the whole presence of a military. Look at the United States government. What makes the United States government powerful is not the natural principle of the universe, which is that power to rule grows out of service. But the United States does not rule because it serves the world. It rules because it is a military power. And that power is now at an end. Minister Farrakhan said the very existence of a military means something is wrong. The only time you have to have law enforcement is because people have become so remote from God that they will not impose His will on themselves, so they become dangerous to themselves and others. So it takes outside external physical force to keep order in society. So Minister Farrakhan announced in July of 1998, on the 4th of July, Independence Day, we are going to have to undergo a restructuring of the Nation of Islam. We will not be successful in getting people to assist us when we do it from a position of imposition of force. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has told us that when you go to Allah seeking His assistance, you don't make a demand. You don't say, look, God, you got 48 hours to send me my mortgage note, or else I'm going to stop praying. You entreat Him. We are sincere in prayer, the Holy Quran says, and lengthy in supplication. Well, since every human being and all these people around us, everybody in this room has divine attributes of Allah, whether they're manifest or not, whether you and I perceive them or not. So when we see one another, we are seeing Allah. This means when we go to one another, we don't go talking down and with force we entreat, because this person has beneficence. They have mercy. They have creative and destructive power that you need and I need. And all praise is due to Allah. So we have to follow Minister Farrakhan, not just how he looks, but how he is, which is humble. And this means seeing God. We can't say, oh, you don't have on a headpiece or you don't have on a bow tie. We have to be in the world, but not of it. If we engage in self-improvement, then that is the basis for community development. Be an example of what you want your brother and sister to be. All of that leads me to say, and I'm not going to be long, this was a success because it was open. Because you came here, nobody bothered you. You were allowed to enjoy the seminars.
That's right.
You were allowed to hear from people who have sense, who prepare, who have studied in the field of endeavor that they purport to represent, not just running up, getting in a mic, talking and babbling. See, the days are over of capturing people's attention just because, as someone mentioned in the Real Love seminar, you're the loudest. It's a time to listen, because we had dialogue in the seminars, because the youngest to the oldest has something to contribute. And so how do we know we were successful on an actual fact scale? Well, Brother Maurice Muhammad, the director of protocol for Mosque number 69, showed me. I was so overwhelmed to see this. And it shows you the work that has been done. Because our main purpose in moving this conference is to stimulate an interest in this teaching. As Minister Williams said, a precursor to bringing 1 million families to Washington, D.C., October 16th. And what you see today on the whole front page of the religion section, the Birmingham News, carrying faith into traffic, movement holding Birmingham meeting. This is coverage of this regional conference with a huge picture of Minister Clarence Muhammad on the corner. And look at this. As he's carrying flyers to promote the event, these are the quotes that the newspaper article has. We believe that the so-called Negroes are most in need of mental resurrection. Therefore, they will be resurrected first. That's in bold, and then it says, from what the Muslims believe, section of the final call. That's propagating Islam. That's what you did. Because as the Holy Quran says, surely Allah changes not the condition of a people until they change their own condition. As our illustrious National Director of Education, and soon that's going to be, you know, when the Supreme Captain is with us, I don't say, ladies or gentlemen or brothers and sisters, the Supreme Captain. I always say our Minister of Defense. Because one of my tasks in the last 15 years has been the assistance of the development of the Muhammad Mosque Provisional Constitution. And one of the things Minister Farrakhan stressed during that time we were working on that document is that these are ministries. And so at the root of every department is Allah, God. And so whatever field of endeavor you are in, it has to be God-driven. So I am glad to have with us our Minister of Education, Sister Shelby Muhammad, who, as you heard, is highly spiritual. And as she said to us, we were blessed to, the regional laborers attended the final call anniversary celebration. And as she said, to stand in a room and hear the minister's voice live for the first time in many months, to hear it as clear and as strong as we heard it, And as Sister said, and she, like myself, we are members of the National Board. And Sister Shelby lives in and works in Chicago on a daily basis. So there's nothing spooky. It's a blessing to us to have an emissary come from Chicago and give us a warning. You know, in kingdoms, you know, when the king is about to come, he doesn't just walk out. See, in the months and days prior, heralds are sent out in the land to let you know that the king is coming so that you can prepare. So that you can look, sound, act, think, and feel appropriately. And so we have been sent a herald, an emissary. We have Sister Shelby here. We have Brother Thaddeus Muhammad from Chicago, Illinois, a top soldier, top FOI, who is very studious, very spiritual, and Allah blessed him this past year to write a book called Set Yourself in Heaven at Once. A very highly developed treatise, and he was on our economic panel, and the book covers, though, not only economics, but self-development. It is primarily directed for the FOI, but it is really for all of us, and that book is available. We also have from Jackson, Mississippi, Minister Frank Muhammad. From Macon, Georgia, Minister Darrell Muhammad. I'd also like to take this opportunity to announce to you that one of the blessings I've had in the last month or so in this struggle is when a certain young minister who is deeply, deeply loved by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and has a reputation throughout the nation as an effective teacher, beautiful spirit, and a beautiful family man. Up until a few months ago, he was over the city of Tallahassee, Florida. You remember Florida. Before we lost it in the war. But he was over Tallahassee during the time of Minister Jamil Muhammad's administration, and I understand that during that time, Tallahassee was giving Atlanta a run for its money. And lo and behold, Minister Ray, who originates from Atlanta, Georgia, has returned to Atlanta. All praise is due to Allah. So, I have asked him if because he has been successful in administrating over a city as a representative of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, I have asked Minister Ray to serve as the Assistant Southern Regional Minister, and he has agreed to do that. So thank you, Minister Ray. And of course, my dear brother, the Alabama State Representative of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and his wonderful staff, which we'll mention that again in a few moments, their work. And of course, our beloved brother who represents the incoming power structure, the new millennium, the national coordinator of the National Nation of Islam Student Association, Brother Ashad Muhammad, who coordinated the Youth Summit today, is with us. We are also pleased to have our agricultural scientist with us today, Dr. Ridgely Muhammad, because without land and the ability to grow our own food, this is all theory. And of course, at the end, the local Birmingham Mosque number 69 Director of Protocol, who worked very hard on this event. And really, it was when he secured the Birmingham Civic Center that we knew we were going to go up to another level. We're going to come out of that high school auditorium mentality. So we thank Brother Maurice Muhammad. And of course, our Assistant Regional Director of Protocol, Sister Deborah Muhammad. Have you seen that wonderful program? She put that program together and made this thing flow. But very briefly this afternoon, and I want to begin by giving to you greetings from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan of Assalamu Alaikum to all of us. Thank you so much. Resurrecting the Family Unit. There was an article in the Friday, June 18th issue of the Atlanta Constitution entitled, "Bring Families Back Together." And it says here that the great tragedy for black fathers today is that 70% of all black children are born to mothers who have never been married. By some estimates, more than 80% of this generation of black children is likely to spend much of their childhood living apart from their fathers. 5 years ago, the fatherhood movement hardly existed. Today, in the African American community, we estimate 2,000 to 3,000 local leaders and up to 1,000 new organizations engaged directly in reuniting fathers with their children. Now, let's just freeze real quick. The messenger said there's no such thing as a coincidence. Now, if you heard what I read, it says 5 years ago, the fatherhood movement hardly existed. Now, 5 years ago, I'm not good at math, but Sister Shelby did an awesome analysis of our fear of mathematics. When we are mathematics, Islam is mathematics. But anyway, counting back 5 years, that's 1994. Right. 1 year before the Million Man March. Now, you have this explosion of interest in reuniting fathers with children. No mention of the march or the man that made it happen, but I'm not going to worry about that, because we are going to see to it that his name is lifted up. We're going to see to that by what we do in the next few months. It goes on to say, black children need and deserve strong, loving fathers in their lives. It says again, 5 years ago, this truth was ignored and not acknowledged. Now it says, we are realizing that neither the African American community nor the nation can truly prosper until we reverse the terrible trend of father absence. Atlanta Constitution, editorial page, written by two brothers who are afraid to name the man that made it happen. I'll name them Obie Clayton, director of the Morehouse Research Institute, and David Blankenhorn, president of the New York Institute of American Values. I don't know about David Blankenhorn. I know Obie is a brother. Now, it says, we must help young parents, this is key, as we find them, not as we simply wish them to be. Keep in mind that most parents are single. So because parents in the black community are not married, we can't step back and say there's nothing we can do. See, we have to help them as we find them. And then it says, we must do everything possible, whatever a couple's marital status, to nurture the father-child bond. Now, I want to say to us this afternoon very quickly that the family is, in fact, our power base. It is not white corporate America. It is not even politics. It's nothing outside of the home. It begins in the home. Now, even in the family, I'm going to prove to you how the family precedes government and business. And if you can develop a functional family, no matter what it's comprised of, then you can be effective in business and in government. So we, as a black community, are doing it backwards. When we seek professional achievement and corporate integration and have done nothing to address the void that we come out of every morning. See, when you step out into white America, what is your base of strength that gives you the energy and the will to maneuver your way through the difficulties of being black in white America? If you come out of a dysfunctional household and you left that house and no one there is encouraging you, then you arrive already de-energized. And that is why we have to have a system of justice. If you remember, one of the things that Minister Farrakhan has been stressing, even within the Nation of Islam, is what? Justice. Right. Now, let's look at the family very quickly. And I'm going to show you how, until you establish a justice system in your house, you can't be effective outside. Sibling rivalry, or the battle between brothers and sisters among children. Sibling rivalry can evolve into violence if there is no justice in the home. Now, what do I mean by a system of justice? And I'm just speaking now to parents. We can take the same analysis and use it between husband and wife and other relationships, but I want to use parent and child. Now, when you have children, if lawbreakers among the children are not caught or apprehended, let's say you have 3 or 4 children, and one of them is just a terror, but never gets what we call busted. Or if he or she is apprehended, they are set free without standing trial. Other children in the house, if they breathe irregularly, are arrested, taken into custody, given time without hope of parole. Do we understand where we're headed with this? It is important to understand, as Minister William pointed out, see, we want to pull out what we want out of the study guide. You know, Minister Farrakhan did a study guide called The 4 Great Impediments to Self-Development. We want to use racism. Oh, yeah, I like that. Let's talk about racism. But as Minister Williams said, we don't want to deal with sexism. And the other 2 he named, nationalism and materialism, or the worship of matter. But in the house, we have to recognize that laws have to be established and enforced for the purpose of the protection of the family, not only from outside society, but the members have to be protected from one another. Right. Until we develop spiritually sufficiently to be trusted to rely on ourselves. So a family is actually a mini society. That's why it's a power base. Because our effectiveness in the family is the measure of our effectiveness in the world. Imagine living in a community where there's no law, where you have no court to go to settle disagreement. Now, under those circumstances, my neighbor and I can abuse each other. I can throw rocks at his house and break his windows. He can set my car on fire. We can go back and forth until it escalates to death. Now, under those circumstances, we abuse each other with impunity until somebody is gone. Now, that type of mutual antagonism is natural, because unless and until the ego is allowed to develop, when we're born and through the early years of our life, the ego centers all action around us. So we're very self-centered. So there has to be a discipline in the house to force us to respect one another's rights. I remember Minister Abdullah Muhammad using the example. He was talking about how people become thieves. And that's what I'm leading to. You had a man 2 days ago in Atlanta, Georgia, who murdered 12 people. 5 years ago, he beat 2 people to death and got away with it. I guarantee you, if you trace this man's life back to childhood, he was displaying fits of rage and an inclination for an uncontrolled temperament that those who were in charge of him just let pass, never addressed. So he kept going and going unchecked until he ended up wreaking havoc in society and finally took the lives of other people. And the same thing is true of us. Now, the reason America is falling is because America has denigrated and dismissed the need for the family unit. The whole focus is on racism, sexism, nationalism, and materialism. All 4 of those impediments are strong in America. And as a result of that, each generation is producing more and more human beings who are really animals. They've never developed beyond the reptilian mind or the brain stem. So when they go out, it's like an animal going out in the street, just seeking food, shelter, and to mate with somebody. And just like a lizard or an alligator or a crocodile, they don't think. All they know is I see it and I want it, even if it belongs to somebody else. So Minister Abdullah said, when you have children, you have to teach them from an early age. Even when you open the refrigerator door, you see something in the refrigerator that you know is not yours. You don't go and take the bean pie or the salad and just eat it. And the child will say, well, nobody else had it. Nobody said it was theirs. But you know you didn't buy it. You know you didn't bring it into this house. You didn't go and ask, does this belong to anyone? See, we have to start teaching our children for their sake and ours to respect one another. Because the individual family is the microcosm of the need for law and order. Many people, as Minister Farrakhan has said, not only is racism a factor in police brutality, but it's also the insecurity of people that join the police force. Psychologically, we don't take time to find out, number one, what makes a person take a job like that? And then number 2, what happens to them after months and years of being in that type of profession? So you end up with a young black man being shot 41 times because you have racism, you have nationalism, you have materialism or inordinate greed. And so going back to the home, brothers and sisters, in the absence of justice in the house, neighboring siblings, like neighboring countries, begin to assault one another. The older child is bigger and tougher. And so that allows the older one to oppress the younger. But the junior member of the family has their own weapons. They can strike back in the night, breaking toys and prized possessions, telling people at school little private secrets of their older brother and sister. And then mutual hatred. See, what starts out as a natural juvenile aggression, if we as parents don't check it, it grows into hatred. And eventually it erupts like a volcano, and that's how you end up having people shoot each other, not out in the street, but inside their own houses. But what I'm here to say is this: those of us who are parents and have children, when the children appeal to us for help, Mom, Dad, he's doing this to me. She's doing this or that. In many homes, we don't have sufficient disciplinary control to enforce judgment. And in other cases, we are so exacerbated and exasperated with the bickering among the children that we just get tired of it and step back and refuse to get involved. See, that's relieving yourself from your post. And in truth, what we're doing is we're saying to ourselves, and I've actually heard parents say, I'll be so glad when this child gets old enough to go out on their own. So in other words, you're allowing this problem to evolve and become someone else's problem. So I say to us today, in restoring the family unit, one of the most important responsibilities is to establish an equitable system of justice and a balance of power at home. There have to be laws that are fairly enforced for each member of the family. For example, number one, and I'll tell you something. Today, one reason I'm sharing this with you is I was reflecting the other day on the relationship I have with my two sisters. Next to God first, then my husband, my two sisters are my best friends. Now, how did this happen? This didn't just happen by accident. We had the same sibling rivalry that everybody else has. Fights, cat fights as they call them, taking each other's dresses and wearing some, you got my sweater on, take it off, and so on. But you know what my parents did throughout life? Is they exhorted us to love one another and be friends. And you know what they would use? They didn't use force. They would come to us and say how disappointed they were. And I just knew you were better than this. They would take each of us in a room and tell us each the same thing. We found that out when we grew up. You are the star of the family. You're the one we had. Oh, don't tell it, because see, your sisters are wild. But you, oh, when you were born, oh my God. And we were so hurt to find out that you would hit your sister. You know she's probably jealous of you. Give her a little, lighten up a little bit. And this worked. And it was about 2 years ago that we were talking. I said, you know, Mom told me, yeah, she told me the same thing. Minister Farrakhan does that. You know how many of us have been told we are the best helper? He's such a great parent because he loves all his children. You know, and no human being does not have favorites. You have children, some of them you like better than others. You may love them all, but you don't like them all. And so, and some of them, I'm saying your preference for their company is not the same. But I have never seen Minister Farrakhan treat any of us differently. He is equally because he loves us all. And he tells all of us, oh, I love you, I appreciate you, you're so wonderful. We walk away, oh, man. Oh, he makes you think he could not live without you. And this is how we have to be first. And the reason I'm using children is because what I'm leading to is the way for us to build a community and a nation, we actually have to be that way with each other. But if we won't make that sacrifice to actually step forth and settle the differences between our own our parents' sacrifice and suffering, and what is your sacrifice for? Not only to leave people here with a job or some will that you left, but you want to leave a family bond. So I say this to us for purposes of instruction. Number one, and not having become a parent yet, I'm speaking from having had experience as a child and how my parents did it. Number one, don't allow your children to make fun of each other. You know, a lot of things, beloved, that we dismiss as light is serious. I want you to look at it like this. Imagine yourself going into an airport, for example, and you're at the gate waiting for a plane. and somebody comes up to you and says, you big buffalo head, you ugly big nose, you would say, well, hold up, wait a minute. What is this? But if that is not all right among us, then why is it acceptable behavior when you're 5 and 6 years old? See, at what point do you correct it? We make a mistake of dismissing our children as some subspecies. They are divine. They are born to evolve into God. So we have to begin refining their behavior. In fact, many scientists say you should start correcting them when they are as young as 8 months old. You remember Sister Shelby, we were at the national board meeting the other week. And of course, we're taught that you can communicate with the child in the womb. We know the child is shaped and formed from our thoughts. Sister Aisha Muhammad, who's the national captain of the MGT, just gave birth to a little girl. She and her husband, are parents of a little girl, Halima, who Minister Farrakhan named. He named her Halima, which means patient and forbearing, because this is a baby who's been waited for years. It's been a long wait for this child. But Sister Captain had her baby with her at our national meeting. This baby's 4 months old, highly intelligent, studying people, very well behaved. So her mother held her up and she was letting her bounce up and down on her lap. And and here's the baby, 4 months old. The baby started blowing bubbles. And started drooling. Then she looked around at us. So her mother said, Halima, now you know better than that. Don't do that. And she stopped. 4 months old. Are you hearing me? She found something else to do. Yeah, we know you're 4 months, you've been on earth 16 weeks. So of course you're gonna blow bubbles, you're testing body functions. Ooh, there's a foot. But what you wanna do is, whatever behavior you start looking at, that you know that in a year or two is gonna be unacceptable. Why are you waiting until they get out at the meeting or in the airport or the supermarket and they start calling people names and cursing at people, spitting at people? Now you're humiliated. Because we won't take the weight of being in authority. We want a title in the mosque. We'll fight to the death to be in charge of somebody in the mosque. When God gave us charge of divine life at home, and we're not handling that. So certainly children joke, they crack on each other, as we say, but don't let it get destructive. When you see one child developing an inferiority complex from what the other children are doing, then you have to stop that. And I'm coming to an end. Now, every child has to have some private territory. This is why we got to have an economic base so that we can build homes for ourselves with sufficient space, because it has a strong negative impact on a child if they don't have space that is theirs. They're children of the Most High God, and they need space. And ideally, they need their own room, just like you need a room. You don't just go in your room and lock the door and they all pile in a room. Oh, that's the children, plural, generic. They can all stay in there. No, they're human beings too. And they need downtime just like you and I. So we have to work toward making an economic base that will allow the proper growth of our children. Now, older children should not tease the younger ones unmercifully, as I mentioned. And younger children should not harass the older ones. Don't just sit back and watch that go on. And you're standing at the TV, y'all stop it in there. Don't let me hear you no more. You're so loud, I can't hear the TV. Don't even bother to get up and go look and see what's going on. We have to stop that. Now, don't make them play with each other when they would rather be alone. Don't force them to be with each other when they need time alone. You have to study them and see what their needs are as a person. Now, we have to mediate conflict as quickly as possible and show impartiality and fairness. So any plan of justice requires, number one, respect for the leadership of the parent. Number two, willingness of the parent to mediate. And number three, from time to time, there has to be punishment and enforcement. And when we accomplish that system of justice with love, we're going to see a change in our household. Because we talk often about the issue between husband and wife, and there's no time to go into that this afternoon. But we tend to say we can ignore child development until they're 13 or 14 years old. And by then, it has become too late. So what is the first step? And Minister Ray, I think I'm going to just share a little bit of the theory, and Minister William, what we were talking about yesterday, about the community. We're talking about the problems, but what is the solution? And of course, the program of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad contains that solution. But where are we right now? And what is the next step? We know that we're at the end of the teaching, the talking phase. And that we have to now become a model or example. We can't just keep talking about Islam. We have to show the world what an Islamic community, a real one, looks like. Now, that means we are going to have to live in proximity to one another. One reason that the Jewish people have been able to evolve into having power and influence in society is because they live close together. And I want you to hear me well on this. Because a lot of times as Muslims, we don't make any effort to strive to live in close proximity. In fact, in many cases, we do everything in our power to get as far away from each other as we can. A brother raised a question this morning about marital counseling and the pressure that is on all of us to have a marriage, a family, an income-producing field of endeavor. But without practicing Islam, we are actually robbing ourselves of the foundation that supplies us with the energy to be able to endure the various levels or stages of evolution until we reach success. Well, the key component to that is peer pressure. They asked the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, why is the nation so successful in eliminating drug addiction, in changing people's behavior? It's peer pressure. See, when you come into our circle, there's a dress code. There's a modem of behavior that is expected. And if you are not in harmony with a certain modesty, a certain civilized behavior, person doesn't even have to be registered as such. If you go to a Savior's Day convention, you'll see that everybody that comes has a certain aura. The Million Man March, you have brothers with shorts on, brothers with jeans on, brothers with their hair processed, bald, long hair. But what they all had in common was civilized conduct. Because there's an energy, there is a pressure from people who practice Islam. Now, to show you how powerful it was, if you were to factor in the number of Fruit of Islam at the Million Man March, it was such a small percentage, an infinitesimal number of brothers registered in the nation compared to 1 million men. And yet the power of their discipline permeated throughout 1 million men. You understand what I'm saying? So unless we want to just make this a theory and have this whole thing die with us, and our children have to start this thing all over again, then we've got to move to the next step. We've got to bite the bullet, as rough as it sounds, and live together. We have to have a self-contained community. This is what the ministers were talking about yesterday. And a vision of, if you drive around now, you know these gated communities that they're building, which really is in one sense a futile thing for them to do, because the gunman that went off, he went off in Buckhead, most affluent neighborhood in Atlanta, predominantly white. That's where it happened. That's who did it. But what we're talking about is not forming a community to escape anything. We're talking about building a new world within the old one. See, some of us are sitting around waiting for the destruction. We heard, oh, the second coming, Christ is coming. He's going to destroy everything. Y2K, which Minister Farrakhan broke down as Yaqub the second. And we know that the scientist Yaqub, the first genetic engineer, was Yaqub. He brought in a new world, and he didn't do it with physical hostility or a physical war. Now that may happen also. There's going to be that aspect. But the new world is coming in not from an external force being imposed on the old world. The new world is being given birth right inside the old. If you remember what Minister Farrakhan wrote in Closing the Gap, or what he said in his interview, it's just like a baby in the womb of the mother. The baby is inside, but this is a whole independent new life form. So what the baby does is the baby draws. It doesn't absorb everything from the mother. It absorbs that which will facilitate its growth. So while we remain inside of America, we extract from America that which will facilitate our growth, and yet we are also being fed from the supreme wisdom, that which is bringing in a new life form. Because by drawing on that, we're becoming something new and different. Now we need a place where all of those who are of that mind can be together, so that we can exert peer pressure on one another, and also so that we can provide an environment that our children will stay in. See, family unit, power base, it starts with a community. So as we were discussing, if you buy a large plot of land, you know, black people are paying, if you get a 30-year mortgage, you might end up paying $600,000 for a building that it costs $15,000 to build. And you're paying for the rest of your life and die still owing. Now, if it costs $15,000 to $20,000 or $30,000 to build a $250,000 house, then doesn't it make more sense to buy land and then retain the services of contractors, building contractors, to build and buy the homes directly, especially if it's in volume? Minister Ray, who is a businessman, is talking about how you can just get cheap land and we can build these homes. You can build 50 or 60 homes in an area. Now, you can also, when I was in Charlotte, North Carolina a couple of weeks ago at an event where I was paid $5,000 not to speak, had to go speak across the street because the Negroes were afraid for me to speak at the corporate black employee network, so I was relegated to a meeting across the street, but they paid me anyway. So I went ahead and gave the lecture to the believers and a few other strong black folks. But those who sponsored my coming, they said they didn't want a representative of Minister Farrakhan, but those strong ones, I met with them. They're engineers with DuPont. And the brother said to me in the hotel, he said, sister, we can build cities. And we're ready to follow the direction of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. That's right. And I've got to get off this podium. Now, we have in our midst structural engineers, mechanical engineers, because as Minister pointed out, we can't only build the houses. He said that's the easy part, but we got to lay streets. We have to have power. That's right. See, you got Dr. Ridgely here who is teaching us on the time and what must be done insofar as the physical preparation for destruction, not this rhetoric. We've got to get past the rhetoric and move into the tangible. Now, there are already communities among white folks where they have their survival kits, and they have places under the ground, warehouses where they're planning to go, right? That's one reason they're gating them. And they've got arsenals that they plan to pull out. But of course, we have the God who's bringing the destruction on our side. But a self-contained community. Now imagine, it's hard to practice Islam when you're the only Muslim in the block. So of course you and your husband are fighting, because until you each practice Islam and perform your duty to Allah, you have no rights in one another. So you're at war all the time. And if you're not practicing Islam, how can the children practice Islam? But you need strength. You need to know that your next door neighbor is a Muslim. So you're not going to walk out of your house with some shorts on to mow the lawn. You can let your children walk down the street in a Muslim community and know they're not going to breathe cigarette smoke or somebody's going to offer them some marijuana. So imagine beautiful homes. Imagine a nice duck pond, swimming pools, tennis courts, daycare center, and above all, the University of Islam. Right there, connected to the community. And the mosque. All of this is in the same 200-300 acres. A park, jogging trails, picnic areas. And until we get our own place, our own supermarket, don't you know that if you are the neighborhood, then I don't care if it's Publix or Kroger or Winn-Dixie, that doesn't matter. If we're the ones doing all the shopping in the supermarket, listen, let me tell you what we want in here. And let me tell you, we want to see the manager. Okay? Let me tell you, let's take a walk through. Now take this out of here. Don't even have that. We don't want our children looking at that. We're going to bring in pies from the Salam Bakery. We're going to bring in what we want to eat. You know, see, that's what Caucasian people do. Black people sit in a neighborhood, and whatever they sell, we buy it. So all of the leftover inventory that white folks throw away, they truck it and bring it to our neighborhood because we don't demand. But as Muslims, and we want the cashiers to look a certain way. And as I think Brother Brent mentioned to me this morning, the regional secretary, I was sharing with him the idea. He said, you know, sister, you imagine all the employment that building such a place creates? You're talking about not only builders and engineers, you're talking about people doing interior design. You're talking about buying furniture at wholesale prices in volume. You're talking about lawyers. You're talking about all kinds of people having something to do. So what we're doing now is we're keeping the dollar circulating inside of our community. So we have to begin thinking, as Minister Williams said, and I close, we are one. Say He, Allah, is one, and we are one. And so it is not within our power to be able to achieve this heaven on earth that we desire as individuals. We have to look around and see that these brothers and sisters who are with us this afternoon are the ones that are going to make this a reality. So remember, our job is to resurrect the family unit. It is the power base of the new millennium. May Allah bless all of us with the light of understanding. As I leave you in peace, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.